first was introduced to the idea of cold showers about 2 years ago. I was supposed to meet a friend of mine named Nick Reese in Portland. He was a friend of a friend, a really successful entrepreneur online, and doing really interesting things. I met Nick in a bar and immediately introduced myself. I told him what I was up to. I just quit my job and I was taking a better job, a bigger job with a better pay, more money, more opportunities, better people to learn from, and eventually one day, when I got done with that job, I would eventually quit it, start my own business. After listening to me blather on for about 5 minutes, Nick took a step back and he looked at me and he said, "So Joel, why haven't you started your own business already?" I was a little bit flustered. I looked at him and said, "You know what, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't really have the knowledge, I don't know the right people, I'm just not ready." He listened to my excuses for a little bit and then asked the same question. "So Joel, why haven't you started your own business already?" At this point, I was a little bit annoyed because it didn't seem like he'd listened to me for the last 2 minutes, giving my really good reasons, really valid reasons and stories on why I hadn't started my own business yet. So I repeated them to him, hoping that they would get through to his head this time. And then I wrapped it all up with, "Besides, I just really don't know what to do anyways." And Nick looked at me and he said, "That's not the problem. You already know what you need to do. You just need to go ahead and do it. What you're scared of is you're scared of being uncomfortable. And if you want to get used to being uncomfortable, all you have to do is take 30 days of cold showers and you'll be fine." And he left it at that.
What happens when we get into cold is that we experience an increase in norepinephrine, in noradrenaline release, and in adrenaline release. The fact that cold exposure, deliberate or no, increases norepinephrine and epinephrine in our brain and body means that it is a very reliable stimulus for increasing norepinephrine and epinephrine. That's sort of an obvious statement, but that obvious statement can be leveraged to systematically build up what we call resilience. Now, when we experience a stressor in life, whether or not it's something bad happens in our relationship or something bad happens in the world and we feel stress, that stress is the consequence of increases in norepinephrine and epinephrine in our brain and body. Very similar, if not identical, to the kinds of increases that come from deliberate cold exposure. So deliberate cold exposure is an opportunity to deliberately stress our body. And yet, because it's deliberate, we can learn to maintain mental clarity. We can learn to maintain calm while our body is in a state of stress. And that can be immensely useful when encountering stressors in other parts of life. And that's what we call resilience or grit, our ability to, or mental toughness, our ability to lean into challenge or to tolerate challenge while keeping our head straight, so to speak. Noradrenaline and adrenaline are often co-released in the brain and body, so they work as kind of a pair to increase our level of agitation, our level of focus, and our desire and our ability to move. They are often co-released from different sites in the brain and body with dopamine, a molecule that is commonly misunderstood as the molecule of pleasure, but is actually the molecule of motivation, reward, and pursuit.
The next day I went to do the same thing, and as I jumped in the shower and turned the knob cold, all the thoughts and all those feelings started rushing up inside me again. This is a bad idea. This is really dumb. This is going to be really cold. You remember how bad it was yesterday? But I did it anyways, turned to cold, jumped in, and I screamed like a little girl. After 5 minutes, I jumped out, toweled off, and 30 seconds to a minute later, I was totally fine. As I kept doing this for 30 days, over and over and over and over again, I started to realize something really interesting. That all the excuses I was telling myself in the shower before I turned the knob to cold were the exact same excuses that I was telling Nick in the bar in Portland about why I couldn't quit my job. And they were the exact same excuses I was telling myself in my life about all the different reasons why I couldn't do the things that I really wanted to do.
But deliberate cold exposure has also been studied in animal models and in humans in the context of increasing metabolism, even in converting certain fat cells that we call white fat cells, which are the ones where energy is stored, they're the ones that we typically think of as kind of blubbery fat, to beige or brown fat, which is thermogenic fat, meaning that it can increase core body temperature and serves as kind of the furnace by which we increase our core metabolism. So With a very broad stroke, I can say that white fat is generally the kind of fat that people want less of, and beige fat and brown fat is generally the kind of fat that if you're going to have fat cells, and you certainly need fat cells, that you want more of. They are thermogenic. They help you stay lean. They actually serve as a reservoir for heating your body up if you're ever confronted with a cold challenge. And of course, people are using deliberate cold exposure to reduce inflammation post-exercise, to reduce inflammation generally. And people are also using cold to enhance performance in the context of strength training, in the context of endurance training.
And what you start to realize is that, like me, all those excuses that you tell yourself in the shower, they can either do one or two things. They can convince you that you're right, and that all those stories, and all those reasons, and all those excuses, they're legitimate, and they're gonna keep you from taking a cold shower, and you're not gonna even try. Or you can decide that they don't matter. And you can decide that one way or another, regardless of those stories, you're gonna take a cold shower. I've been taking cold showers for about 2 years, ever since Nick told me about this. And it's one of those things that I keep coming back to in my life as sort of a litmus test for the type of person that I want to be. Every single time I find myself needing a little extra strength or a little extra courage to go do something that is hard or difficult or just a little bit uncomfortable, I take cold showers. So when I was training for my first half Ironman, I took cold showers. When I quit my job, finally, I took cold showers. When I started my own business, I took cold showers. When I got in the best shape of my life, I took cold showers. When I ran my first ultra marathon, I took cold showers. When I got up this morning to do a Tedx talk, I took a cold shower. And what I realized is this. I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I told myself something. I said, if you're not willing or able to be the type of person that is willing to be uncomfortable for 5 minutes alone in the shower, where the only negative outcome is you being cold for 5 minutes, and the only person affected by that decision is you, then how will you ever have the strength or the courage to choose to be uncomfortable in a situation where the outcomes are much, much greater, and the people affected by your decision far outnumber just yourself?